Michael, the thing that's playing out now in Washington is this back and forth on Trump nominations to cabinet posts. I will get to that in a second, but one of the things that's happened, and this is pretty significant in my view, and I wanted to see if you agree with me. One of the things that's happened is that Trump sort of set up his own little office that isn't among a cabinet appointment type position. In this case, I'm talking about our friend Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, the two of whom have been charged with sort of paring government down, trying to eliminate the waste in government. It's the Department of Government Efficiency, they're calling it. And when it first happened, and this is the part that I wanted to get your opinion on, when it first happened, I thought, well, these guys don't really have any power. I mean, this isn't a real agency. They can't eliminate an arm of government on their own. They would need to make recommendations, and then those recommendations presumably would be put before Congress, et cetera. But here's what happened this week. The House Oversight Committee announced, this just happened yesterday, that Republicans are planning to create a subcommittee that would work with Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy on President-elect Trump's Department of Government Efficiency and follow through potentially on many of these recommendations. So in other words, they're not just making recommendations to the executive. They would have an instrument of government to at least begin the process of following through on many of the recommendations they would make. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's not unprecedented. I mean, what they're basically doing is making suggestions and recommendations to Congress, and nothing can happen without Congress's involvement. Similarly, Bill Clinton did that when Al Gore was his vice president. He charged Al Gore with paring government waste as well. And they issued a report that was joint between the vice president's office and the Congress. So you need Congress to be part of the picture if you're going to try and make change. I mean, you can have Musk and Ramaswamy in an office together, but like you said, Mark, anything they say would also have to be approved by Congress. Just because they say it, there are executive orders that can happen, but this kind of a thing is not something that's done by fiat or executive order. What's interesting is Speaker Mike Johnson, who from Louisiana, where they have the most gators in the country, is somebody who has had a very difficult relationship with the very far right in his party, in the Freedom Caucus and whatnot, even though Johnson was part of the Freedom Caucus, the Matt Gaetz, Eli Crane, Marjorie Taylor Greene wing. Well, he's talking now about smoking a peace pipe with Marjorie Taylor Greene and having her chair that subcommittee. So you're going to have Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, which is, it's political comedy stuff you can't always believe. But when you have control of both houses of Congress and the White House, you get a period of time where these things can happen. And again, it doesn't mean it's going to be approved. Something that Marjorie Taylor Greene is chairing is going to have the skepticism of even some in her own caucus.
They've come through with a Wall Street Journal piece in which they detail some of the stuff they want to do. I'm talking about Ramaswamy and Musk, and they've talked about it in interviews as well. One of the things they speak of is they want to get to a 5-day work week where you have to come in as a government employee between 8 and 6 p.m. And they say that right away will shed a bunch of government employees who've gotten used to working from home, at least for part of the week. The idea somehow that they could go at the government with an axe and be backed up in some way by the House, at least initially, Michael, and they'd need that. You'd need the House buy-in. You're saying, and this, you always kind of talk me off the ledge when you say stuff like this, like, hey, this has been tried before and it's been done before and it's really nothing to panic over, even as they seem super aggro in the way that they're going at it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've never had the richest man in the world chair this effort. So it does bring a little bit of attention to it. It's not a very sexy subject, trimming government waste. So it becomes that when you put Elon Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy less so, and even more so than Vivek Ramaswamy, Marjorie Taylor Greene as the point person on Capitol Hill. You have these really strong personalities and very unusual personalities in American politics who aren't, with the exception of Greene, we're not elected to anything, and so I think that's what makes it a little different, obviously. So I wouldn't say calm down, everything's going to be all right, because there is no precedent for that part of it. But the precedent that exists is that you have to do this with Congress, and involving Congress in the efforts of a White House is certainly not unusual, even if it's sort of extra cabinet. It falls out of the purview of an official government department. Yeah, I will say that there's going to be, look, if the 5-day work the 5-day work week is the worst thing that comes out of this, I think a lot of people on Capitol Hill will be okay with that. Small businesses have been hurt by the lack of by the work from home movement that came out of the pandemic, meaning the people that rely on those workers, whether it be restaurants, whether it be coffee shops, retail, people that pass these establishments on their way to work, in and out of work, that eat there for lunch, et cetera. So I don't think that's going to be met with, real rancor. It's when they try and go too far and actually eliminate the jobs, because, government workers have very good pensions. And just because you're saying you've got to come into the office, I don't think they're going to trim a lot of fat there, because those jobs have to get done.
Well, the more alarming, if you will, or the more radical move is the Schedule F conversion.
Right.
They want to convert
Right.
a bunch of employees to Schedule F. You can maybe review for us again what that is, but essentially it strips them of job protections, right? And they could then make big cuts in the workforce.
Well, that's the biggest part, is when you take away the job security, it gives the people that run these things the ability to just say goodbye, right? Here's your 2-week severance. Here's whatever's left in your 401k. Adios. And that's where it gets dangerous. So that's why I was saying the work week is the least of it. If they do the work week, so be it. But if they do the Schedule F and they find other ways of eliminating people, and that's, listen, I mean, Elon Musk, his MO is eliminating jobs and finding other ways of doing them. And so that's the backstory.
Yeah, it's clearly a plan that they're taking seriously. When they spoke of it initially, and it's still sort of in the initial stages, but I was thinking, well, this feels a little ceremonial or a little performative. I think there will be a lot of performative stuff. Trump likes that stuff. He likes,
and provocative too. He likes being provocative, and
right,
not going through build the wall, but he didn't. And there's a little bit of that to the way he operates.
Yeah, and their plan is to go over regulations. They want to deregulate like crazy, and they say this in this op-ed piece, and they talk about Supreme Court decisions that would essentially back them up. And they want to install legal experts within federal agencies to review regulations before presenting this list of rules for Trump to consider halting through executive action and initiating a process for a review and exactly for a rollback of many of these both regulations and actually, of course, as you know, they want to dismantle big parts of government.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, as you read it again, it doesn't sound sexy, but it can be very, very damaging, and it can be and especially that it's happening so quickly. If he did this after a year back in the White House, I would be less sort of alarmed by it. But he's going to have a free ride for a little while. Then that free ride will end, because the way the politics work and the way the governance works is, John Thune is now going to be the chairman, the majority leader of the Senate. He's going to want to put his foot down on a few things. Trump is a lame duck the moment he takes the oath of office, because the Constitution says he can't run again, despite the bloviating that you hear from other people about changing it. It's not going to happen. And so there will be different dynamics in the House where people are going to try and put their stamp on things, and people are going to try and differentiate themselves for Trump, especially those who want to move on to the presidency. So there's going to be a period where he's going to be able to do these things, but that's not going to last throughout his term.
Now to the politics of confirmation.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see the disruption that is Donald Trump, to which you've sort of just referred a moment ago, meet the industry of Washington that is
Right.
defined by so many norms that butt right up against that. And so with some of his most controversial nominations, I'm talking about Gates, who's now out of the game, Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard, you have Dr. Oz, and RFK Jr. These are, I'd suggest sort of the crown jewels of those who've come from television that clearly and celebrity in the case of RFK Jr.
Well, I mean, in the case of Dr. Oz celebrity, in the case really of Matt Gaetz celebrity, I mean, they do come. Matt Gaetz came from, and it doesn't matter, he's moot now. But I mean, there is this sort of celebrity politician thing, and Donald Trump's also a provocateur. There's the own the libs thing, there's the revenge stuff. So it's all bottled up in the same stuff for him, and I think that's why it's it's a little different than most confirmation processes. And what you started saying there, Mark, is that Donald Trump is now going to run into establishment Washington. Well, in his first term, establishment Washington did pretty much everything that Donald Trump wanted from within his own party. And that's what I'm saying is going to be a little different, not immediately, but in a year from now, and it'll be a Saturday a year from now. So I guess a year from yesterday when we were doing this show.
Wow, very impressive knowledge.
We'll be talking in different ways about it, because it's there will be some pushback from members of his own party that's not going to be there initially. And I think that when you look at these people that have been nominated to these positions, even Linda McMahon, she's a celebrity, right? In a way,
Sure.
Department of Education. So.
Yeah, that's one part of it, that they're celebrities, but there are other parts of it that would suggest that they have troubled histories. Linda McMahon may be lower on the list of those who have been implicated in at least turning a blind eye to sexual assault. I mean, the sexual assault allegations against what was going on at WWE forced the resignation of her husband, and it's suggested that she knew a lot about it. But you get to Kristi Noem, who's the Homeland Security Secretary nominee. I mean, she has her own kind of a radioactivity associated with what she wrote about in her book, and killing the puppy, and Tulsi Gabbard sitting down with Assad and being a mouthpiece for Putin, and then Pete Hegseth. I mean, they're just. And the reason these are all worth noting that way.
You want me to shoot this? Do you need me to shoot this dog?
If that dog says, "We'll call Kristi," she'll send a crew. But there is a kind of thinking, and I sort of have this thinking, which is Trump is going to get most of his picks. Presidents get most of their picks on this stuff.
There are 53 Republican senators. Yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. And there's control. And you're not going to have, his own party turn on him in the kind of numbers over and over again to reject the picks. Yeah. So give me, and I know this is sort of tough to handicap, but nonetheless, the 3D chess of this. I, for example, said Gaetz getting bounced was the worst thing to happen to Pete Hegseth, who's the big loser on that, because now I think his nomination may not survive the scrutiny that he's going to get. Do you agree with that?
I think that's true. I mean, look, there are two senators, Senator Murkowski and Senator Collins, Alaska and Maine, who are going to be tough sells on a lot of these. But he'll have Vice President Vance at that point, who can break a tie. So he's got to lose 4 votes there. He's got to lose more than is probably on the docket, right? So if he goes, if it's anything but tied, he's got his nominees in there. What Murkowski can do is they barter these senators. They'll go to another senator and say, listen, if you vote against Hegseth with me, I won't cause any problems on X, Y, or Z. And it doesn't have to be a nominee. I won't cause any problems on the ag bill. I won't run against you for the chairmanship of X committee. So there are all sorts of different ways that these things can happen. And that's what senators do. And they will do that. Now, I would agree with you that I think Hegseth is probably the first to go, not just because of who he is, but because of the importance of that department to so many Republicans. So I think that if you're talking about, well, what about Kennedy, Health and Human Services? He has an agenda. That agenda is he's not going to take fluoride out of the water overnight, and that's going to have to take a while. So the extremes of Robert Kennedy don't seem like the meat of what these people are going to be hanging on to, the Republicans, I'm saying. But they value the Defense Department. They think it's an important place for serious people. And I don't think they want to make mistakes there.
Just because you mentioned RFK Jr., just to follow up, I want to say that it seems clear, I agree with you, that he's just not going to make any I'd say any progress. For example, taking on big ag. I don't think he'll take big food. I mean,
Yeah.
somehow he wants to clean up the American diet. I mean, have you sit there watch an NFL game? It's just
Yeah.
one. It's just one awful thing after another that's also delicious. So
Right.
we Americans want our deliciousness, and we don't want to be told by the nanny state that we can't have it.
Totally,
And
totally.
I think
And
that's go
a
ahead.
defense appropriations bill coming from the Pentagon is something that congressmen and members and senators deal with all the time. Congress members and senators deal with that all the time. They vote on it. It matters to their district. Not to say that Health and Human Services doesn't, but you don't see big pieces of legislation coming out of the Department of Health and Human Services that are going to make Congress have to act on them, and like they do with spending bills for the Defense Department. So it's not that one is less or more serious than the other. It's just the way that Congress interacts with these departments.
So his suggestions, your point is, or your implied point is, could this languish and
Right.
assuming it gets there? Yeah.
There's not a mandate that they have to come in and do these things as they do voting on a Pentagon budget.
Now to the attorney generalship, and with Matt Gaetz out of the picture, Pam Bondi, the former attorney general of Florida, is the nominee to be the U.S. attorney general. She's a real Trump loyalist. Albert, play a little bit of her on Fox News. She's had a couple of this is from CNN. Go ahead.
This is just one big press conference trying to smear Donald Trump, trying to hurt Donald Trump.
It's really unbelievable what they're doing.
Right.
They are obstructing the candidate, President Donald Trump.
The Department of Justice, the prosecutors will be prosecuted, the bad ones. The investigators will be investigated, because the deep state, last term for President Trump, they were hiding in the shadows, but now they have a spotlight on them, and they can all be investigated.
Thank you, Albert. Yeah, thank you, Albert. I also would mention one thing, and these are my words, not those of our guest. I believe she is corrupt. I think her corruption is shown in the fact that she took $25,000 to in monies for her campaign, and then she dropped the Trump University suit that was well alive in the state of Florida. You'll remember that Trump University settlement included $25 million for people who were defrauded by Trump University. $25 million was the settlement. It was paid by Trump and the university. She dropped it in Florida, having gotten a $25,000 contribution to her campaign. I think she is very corruptible, and so now you might want to say that all AGs are corrupt on some level and blah blah blah. But I thought that was it's a really bad look. But clearly, she's a dogged fighter and defender of Donald Trump.
Yeah, I don't for a second think that that all AGs are corrupt. I don't think that at all. I think Pam Bondi was clearly corrupt. She made some incredible choices. She also never, she never took the 2020 election results seriously. She never believed them. She is somebody who she asked the governor to postpone an execution so that she could go to a fundraiser. I mean, her choices have been anything but kind of, of the people. And I think that she is a controversial loyalist, but controversial loyalists get jobs. She's not the person. I mean, and they've gotten 2 nominations now. Matt Gaetz, a controversial loyalist, and Pam Bondi, a controversial loyalist. And I think that she's not going to be a good and popular pick. But I think Democrats have to sort of get comfortable with the fact that nobody that he's going to name to these departments is going to make them jump for joy. I mean, that's what happens when somebody like this is elected, somebody who doesn't go along with the general ways of Washington, to have somebody who'd been in the Justice Department, to have somebody who was a different kind of AG, for example. That's not what Donald Trump would do. If Mitt Romney had won the presidency, his cabinet wouldn't have, Democrats wouldn't have loved them, but they would have understood those picks.
So she will likely get in. I mean, I don't see any way that she's going to be rejected. And as I say, Michael, would you sign on to the fact that most of his picks will get through?
Oh, yeah, of course they will. I mean, and Democrats are going to vote for a lot of his picks, too. I mean, people should get comfortable with that as well. The giving the president the authority to nominate his cabinet is part of what they do, and that's part of the role of a senator. And a lot of traditionalists are going to support the picks of a president. Maybe not this one as much as they would other presidents, but there are certainly controversial picks in there that are going to have the Democrats are going to talk to their Republican colleagues about in the middle and see if those are the ones that are not going to make it through. And I would imagine that Hegseth, like you said, is numero uno for not making it through.
Daniel is asking, why do you have confidence that the Supreme Court won't give Trump a third term, Michael Shure?
Because it's not just the Supreme Court who does it. Also because they are strict constitutionalists in their own mind. It's changing the Constitution, and the Constitution doesn't just change in that way. So I'm not at all concerned about that.
Cousin Erie says, one way or another, she's going to use the Justice Department to harass Trump's enemies.
There's no question about that. There's no question at all about that. I mean, that's what she's going to do, because that's what her boss wants to do. And it's going to be, the same thing with having people audited who weren't expecting to be audited. I mean, that's how this vengeance is going to happen. It's not going to happen, but by going to jail. It's going to happen by making life really miserable for a lot of the people that Donald Trump holds responsible for both 2020, for the January 6th associations that made of him having caused it, all of that. So I definitely think that that's how it's going to come down.
Give little Marco, as he's called here in this post from Tony Ladati. Thank you for the super chat. 6 months before Trump fires him. That may or may not be true. You can comment on that if you want, Michael, but I also think it brings up something else, which is there are some big egos, and there's only so much limelight, and generally Donald Trump likes that limelight to be on him. I wonder if you can speak to how you handicap that. Like, there were a lot of firings in the first go-round with in season one of the Donald Trump presidency.
Yeah, I mean, there were firings, and there were people that were defying the president because of the things he was asking them to do. So they got fired for defying the president. I think. Look, I don't think we've never seen anybody in our lifetime like Donald Trump in terms of what he's able to get away with, even from people who trust the institutions. And so could he fire people? Yes. One thing you can say about President Biden is that his cabinet has stuck with him. There have been no controversies, no scandals. The scandal in his administration was with his son and wasn't really his administration, obviously. And so I think that there's a difference when this guy is president. But I think the one thing, the security blanket that a lot of people who can't stand him have is the fact that he, like I said at the beginning, he's a lame duck immediately. There's a different kind of power that he's going to be able to wield as time goes by here. And so, I think he's going to fire people. I think there are things that are going to be surprising to all of us that we can't even predict right now. I don't know that Rubio would get fired. I think that in order to get a senator to leave, you don't just fire them right away. But again, predicting Donald Trump is not an easy thing, and hopefully we don't have to do it for very long.
There was this is the last thing, and it's kind of a conspiracy-related thing.
Okay.
It came into me into the email, and I think it was also in a comment after looking at a bunch of comments. I thought this is provocative. I don't ascribe to supporting this conspiracy, but here it is. It's that the green light on Ukraine using missiles supplied by the United States in new ways that would allow them to fire into Russia is a deliberate cranking up of that conflict to leave it on the table for Donald Trump, and to essentially create a bigger mess for Donald Trump to clean up when he takes power. Do you think that there's any of that going on? It doesn't seem very Biden-esque to do it that way.
Well, it doesn't seem Biden-esque, and there's, the U.S. can do it unilaterally, but they're certainly going to speak to, Keir Starmer in the UK. They're going to speak to Macron. This is not something that happens like that. I don't think anybody, including the emailer, but you or me, any of us are qualified to say whether this is a valid conspiracy. Could it be possible? Sure, it could be possible, but it doesn't, it doesn't have that. You'll recall, Mark, I don't think you were born, but I was. The Iran hostages were released just after Reagan took the oath of office. After, and they said that was done to embarrass Carter, even though it was Carter's man Warren Christopher who was over negotiating that release, and it happened. The timing was, of course, it could have happened a day earlier, and everyone would have been okay with it. But embarrassing the other side and embarrassing your counterparts at this point, that does not, I agree, Mark, seem Biden-esque in its execution, nor does it seem consistent with the people like Lloyd Austin and Anthony Blinken. It just doesn't ring true to me. Could it be true? Sure, it could be true, but none of us are qualified to say it, and I would bet against it hard.
Michael, I would be remiss if I didn't draw you into one last question about the election. I've just read so much about the election. I'm not going to ask you about was it legitimate or not. We've more than, I think, successfully tilled that soil on both sides. I am going to ask you if the Democrats are looking to be doing more of the same, or if there was some clarion call that you've heard and that you think the Democrats will kind of reconstitute themselves in some way to make them more effective in terms of winning elections. They did win elections. I shouldn't, but on top of tickets.
I know what you mean. They lost the White House, and they lost it, not decisively, but badly enough that the map looks pretty red. I think less than a month after an election is the worst time to answer these questions. Everybody's pretty raw. Everybody has a theory. I always say that an element of everybody's theory is probably true. Is it candidate based? Is it the fact that they totally misran this campaign, even though people thought that it was going the right way on that side? I think one thing that here's what I think is a good lesson. Governor Newsom in California is visiting every Trump county that voted for Donald Trump in California, in his state, and he's doing it. There's a showmanship to it. There's an outreach. There's an I want to be president thing about it. But there's something true about what he's doing also, which is he's speaking to voters who Democrats don't connect with anymore. And for whatever reason, it's not all because they're enamored of Trump. There was somebody being interviewed. There was a guy doing interviews in Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's district in New York City, asking people who they voted for. Every single person they asked, and I saw about a dozen of them, said they voted for Trump and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. And so there's some connection, there's some disconnect there, right? These people are not about policy. That Democrats are not explaining enough to them. Yes, it was great to have this campaign be about joy and coming together and all of that, but joy is not enough to win a presidency. And I think the Democrats really have to understand their connection with working Americans has been broken in several ways, and they have to mend that. And it's totally mendable, right? I mean, you have to get these people to understand that. And there's going to be fall off in the Republican candidate, whoever it is, whether it's Vice President Vance or another in 2028. They're not going to have the same kind of support that Donald Trump had. Democrats have to make sure that some of those voters come back to them and some of the new voters come to them. I think that's the biggest part, talking to people.
Michael, I look forward to our next visit. By the way, we are dark next Friday, so this will be it. You'll have a Friday off. You'll still receive the same handsome compensation that you're given every Friday.
I am glad. I'm glad, and I will remember on Thanksgiving to be thankful that I have a day off on Friday, but I still get a paycheck, so that's good. I like that. Yeah.
He is so
I don't
generous.
even have a mug. Can I curse? I don't even have a mug.
An effing mug?
An effing mug, yeah.
Well,
right.
Actually, there are new mugs coming.
Yeah, I want an old one. I want an old one.
You want a classic? Of course, you want an OG mug.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I will get you one of those mugs.
I'm sure the Culture Blaster has one.
The Culture Blaster, it's his birthday today.
Yeah, well, I'm
Culture
sure he
Blaster's
has.
birthday. Yeah.
He's getting a
Get
new mug for his birthday,
nothing.
and he probably has an old mug. Kim, how many mugs do you have, Kim? You should have mugs. Kim should have mugs.
I
Yeah.
have total mugs, like so many.
How many does Carla Marinucci have?
I mean,
take
Yeah.
on the
Girl, you
hierarchy
just
of mugs, I
moved.
feel like you're at the bottom, my friend.
I feel like that way too. I'm going to go over to Carla Marinucci's place, and she's going to have a mug, and I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm gonna say, I don't have a mug. It's going to make
Send
her
me that
uncomfortable.
picture of you and Carla Marinucci with the mug
Well,
over
I
the
have the
place.
picture of me and Carla Marinucci. We don't have a mug. So,
That
in
was
any case,
pretty funny the day that you called in, the two of you.
Yeah, that was good.
All right. We love you. Michael Shure, everybody.
Happy
Bye,
Thanksgiving,
Michael.
everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.